A silent distress beacon pulsed in the void above a charred, war-torn planet. Ash drifted through its smoky skies like spent memories, the remnants of a civilization reduced to cinders. The beacon signal was weak, a dying heartbeat in the emptiness of space, carrying the last desperate plea of a world on the brink of extinction. Planet Keros 9 had once been a thriving trading hub at the edge of galactic civilization. Now, it was nothing but shattered ruins, radioactive storms, and mass graves. The planet's surface, once dotted with gleaming dome cities and lush agricultural zones, had been transformed into a wasteland of broken glass and twisted metal. The year was 2473 AD, and the galaxy was still reeling from the interstellar collapse, the sudden, catastrophic dissolution of the United Galactic Alliance that had maintained peace among the stars for centuries. In the largest remaining shelter beneath the ruins of what had once been the capital city, Dr. Leah Arden hunched over a makeshift communication array. Her slender fingers moved deftly across the improvised controls, her eyes reflecting the dim blue light of the emergency power cells. Once, she had been a respected xenoanthropologist, devoted to studying the cultural exchange between species. Now, she was the reluctant leader of Keros 9's final resistance, the last hope for the few thousand survivors huddled in the shelter's cramped quarters. "Any response yet?" a voice asked from behind her. Leah didn't turn around. "Nothing," she said, her voice hollow. "It's been 3 standard weeks since we started broadcasting. Not a single acknowledgement." She closed her eyes, trying to block out the memory of her family's final moments. Her partner and child, trapped in the university's collapsing dome as the first wave of bombardment hit. The invasion had come without warning. A ruthless assault by mercenary forces hired by rival trading corporations seeking to seize Keros 9's strategic position. When the planetary defense systems failed, the corporations simply glassed the surface from orbit and departed, leaving the survivors to suffocate in the toxic atmosphere. "We should conserve power," suggested Thomas, her second in command. "The life support systems—" "No," Leah said firmly. "The beacon stays on. It's our only chance." She straightened her back, wincing at the pain from an old injury sustained during the initial attacks. With all traditional alliances in disarray after the collapse, our only hope is that someone, anyone, will hear our generic SOS. Below them, in the vast caverns that had once been mining tunnels, thousands of civilians clung to life. Children too young to understand why the sky had turned to fire. Elderly, who had survived one apocalypse only to face another. Medical personnel working with dwindling supplies to treat radiation poisoning and crush injuries. Engineers struggling to maintain the failing environmental systems. Their supplies were running low, their morale even lower. Dr. Arden called a young communications tech, her face illuminated by the sudden flicker of a console. "I'm detecting something unusual." Leah hurried over, heart pounding. "A response?" The technician's face was pale. "Not exactly. Someone's intercepted our signal. Multiple parties, actually. But—" she hesitated. "None are answering directly, except—" her voice dropped to a whisper. "Except one." Leah leaned forward to see the screen, and her blood turned to ice. Far across the void, the grizzled flagship of the Varaxian Huntclaw acknowledged Keros 9's desperate call. The massive vessel, organic in appearance with its hull of bone-white material and crimson energy conduits resembling arteries, moved with deadly purpose toward the dying planet. Within its command chamber, Captain Rax Tor stood tall, his scaled hide gleaming under the red battle lights. 8 feet of muscle and predatory intent, with a crown of bony spines framing his reptilian face. He was the embodiment of the galaxy's apex predators. The Varaxians had evolved from pack hunters, and even now, millennia after achieving spaceflight, they viewed the cosmos as nothing but hunting grounds. "The signal is authentic," reported his sensor officer, a female whose scars told of countless successful hunts. A dying world, ripe for culling. Raxtor's vertical pupils dilated with anticipation. Prepare the hunting squadrons. Alert the breeding chambers to ready new specimens for imprinting. His voice was a low rumble, like distant thunder. Send our response, but make our intentions clear. We come to hunt, not to help. The message transmitted into the void was brief. Karos 9, your call has been heard. The hunt claw approaches. Prepare yourselves for the honor of becoming prey. On Earth, at the United Earth Fleet Command Headquarters, beneath the restored ruins of Manhattan. Commander Adrian Reyes stared at the holographic projection floating above the situation table. The SOS from Karos 9 had been detected by Earth's deep space monitoring stations, one of many desperate pleas that echoed across the stars in the wake of the collapse. Normally, such signals were logged, assessed, and, more often than not, regretfully ignored. Earth had its own problems, its own recovery to manage. But this signal was different. "Sir," said Lieutenant Miranda Kim, her face grim. "We've detected another transmission, overlapping with Karos 9's distress call. Varaxian origin." A hush fell over the command center. The Varaxian hunt claw was notorious throughout the galaxy, a species that viewed warfare not as politics by other means, but as sport. Their ships prowled the edges of civilized space, seeking worthy challenges and hunts that would bring honor to their clans. "Play it," Reyes ordered, his weathered face expressionless. The message was brief, but its implications clear. The most feared species in the galaxy had taken an interest in Karos 9's plight, not to rescue, but to exploit. "How long until they reach Karos 9? Reyes asked, his voice low. "At their current velocity, 6 days, sir," responded the tactical officer. Reyes ran a hand through his salt and pepper hair. "And how long would it take our nearest battle group to intercept?" "The Argus Crusader is on patrol in the Procyon sector. If they departed immediately at maximum burn, 7 days. Minimum. Too late. If the hunt claw arrived first, Karos 9 would become nothing more than a trophy world. Its survivors hunted for sport, or worse, subjected to the Varaxians' notorious breeding programs, where captured species were twisted into living weapons. "Call an emergency council meeting," Reyes said finally. "All members, top priority." Back on Karos 9, Dr. Leah Arden's hands trembled as she decoded the direct transmission from the Varaxian vessel. At first, her exhausted mind mistook the response for genuine aid. For one brief, shining moment, hope flared in her chest. "They're coming," she announced to the command center staff, a smile breaking across her face for the first time in weeks. "Someone heard us. We need to prepare the upper levels. Make sure the survivors can be efficiently evacuated." "Wait," Thomas interrupted, studying the decoded message more carefully, his face drained of color. "Leah, Dr. Arden, this isn't a rescue mission." He looked up, eyes wide with horror. "It's the Hunt Claw." The name sent a shockwave through the command center. Everyone knew the stories. The hunting parties that descended on vulnerable planets, the collections of sentient trophies, the bioengineered monstrosities created from captured genetic material. "They'll be here in less than a week," Thomas continued, his voice barely audible. "If we open the shelters." Leah stood frozen, the momentary hope crumbling to ash. "It would be a massacre," she whispered. In the emergency council chamber of the United Earth Fleet, the debate raged. Representatives from every continent argued furiously over whether to intervene in Karos 9's crisis. The room was divided, physically and ideologically, between those who advocated immediate action and those who counseled caution. "We barely survived the collapse ourselves," argued Counselor Joe, her holographic avatar flickering with emphasis. "Our resources are stretched thin recovering our own colonies. We cannot afford to play galactic savior." "This isn't about playing savior," countered Counselor Okafor, slamming his fist on the table. This is about preventing the Varaxians from gaining a foothold in that sector. Today, it's Karos 9. Tomorrow, it could be one of our own worlds. The debate continued as images from Karos 9's last transmissions before the invasion played on the central screen. Children laughing in hydroponic gardens. Scientists working in glass-domed laboratories. Artists creating in floating pavilions. A civilization worthy of preservation, now reduced to desperate survivors in underground bunkers. The Huntclaw isn't just a military threat, added Dr. Eliza Sanchez, Earth's foremost xenobiologist. Their practice of harvesting genetic material to create bioweapons poses an existential risk to all humanoid species. If they capture Karos 9's population, she didn't need to finish the thought. Everyone in the room understood the implications. Finally, Fleet Admiral Jessica Winters rose from her seat at the head of the table. Her weathered face, bearing the scars of 100 battles during the collapse, was grim. "I've listened to all arguments," she said, her voice cutting through the debate like a knife. "And I've made my decision. The Argus Crusader battle group will depart immediately for Karos 9. Commander Reyes will lead the mission." She raised a hand to silence the protests. "This isn't just about saving one planet. This is about who we are as a species, who we choose to be in this new, fractured galaxy." Her eyes swept the room. "If we turn our backs now, we're no better than the predators we fear." As the meeting disbanded, Reyes approached the Admiral privately. "Thank you for your support," he said quietly. "But you know as well as I do that we won't reach them before the Huntclaw arrives." Admiral Winters smiled thinly. "Then you'd better find a way to bend space-time. Commander, I understand we have some experimental jump drives that might shave a day off your transit time. Highly unstable, of course." Reyes raised an eyebrow. "How unstable?" "Let's just say the test pilots have been inconsistent about returning." She met his gaze steadily. "This is your show now, Reyes. Make it count." Within hours, the Argus Crusader and its escort ships broke orbit around Earth. The battle group consisted of 3 heavy cruisers, 5 destroyers, and a complement of smaller craft. Aboard were not only military personnel, but also a contingent of diplomats and scientists. Earth's statement that it was returning to the galactic stage, not just as a warrior, but as a civilization. What the manifest didn't show, however, was the presence of an elite commando unit, the 87th Tactical Response Force, specialists trained on Earth's most hostile environments, soldiers who knew how to fight and survive in conditions that would kill ordinary humans within minutes. As the fleet accelerated toward its first jump point, Commander Reyes received a secure transmission from Karos 9. Somehow, Dr. Leah Arden had managed to establish a direct quantum link, technology that should have been destroyed in the initial attacks. Her face appeared on his private screen, haggard but determined. "Commander Reyes, I'm Dr. Leah Arden, acting governor of Karos 9's survivors." "Dr. Arden," he acknowledged, studying her face. The strain of leadership was evident in the dark circles under her eyes, the tension in her jaw. "How did you access this channel?" A ghost of a smile crossed her face. "I wasn't always a resistance leader. Before the attacks, I helped design the quantum communication array for our university. We managed to salvage some components." Her expression turned serious. "Commander, I need to know, are you really coming to help us, or is this a reconnaissance mission?" Reyes hesitated. Standard protocol dictated minimal information sharing until landfall, but something in her direct gaze made him reconsider. "We're coming with everything we've got, Dr. Arden, but you should know, we won't arrive before the Huntclaw." She nodded, unsurprised. "I've been studying their approach vector. They're taking their time, savoring the hunt." Her voice hardened. "We'll hold out as long as we can. We've moved our people deeper into the old mining complexes. The radiation interferes with their bioscanners. which might buy us some time. Smart thinking, Reyes said. We're pushing our engines beyond safety parameters. If you can last 4 days, we'll try. She looked away briefly, responding to someone off-screen. I have to go. Power reserves are critical. She turned back, her eyes meeting his through the vast distance of space. Commander, thank you for answering our call. Even if you don't make it in time, knowing someone tried. Her voice broke slightly. It matters. The transmission ended, leaving Reyes staring at a blank screen, a strange weight settling on his shoulders. It had been years since he'd felt personal responsibility for a mission. During the collapse, decisions had been made by algorithm, targets selected by probability matrices. This was different. This was human. Meanwhile, the Varaxian Huntclaw fleet advanced relentlessly toward Keros 9. Their journey was not direct. They paused at small outposts and cargo vessels, capturing samples and testing their weapons. Each encounter left behind drifting wreckage and silenced distress calls. The Huntclaw was not merely a military force. It was a moving ecosystem of predation. In his private chamber, Captain Raxtor reviewed the specimens gathered so far. Tanks lined the walls, containing floating biomatter, tissue samples, neural clusters, reproductive organs harvested from a dozen different species. These would be combined with the prime specimens from Keros 9 to create the next generation of hunting beasts. The preliminary scans are complete, Captain, reported his chief geneticist, displaying a hologram of Keros 9's population distribution. Their genetic diversity is exceptional. The radiation has introduced some interesting mutations as well. Raxtor's tongue flicked out, tasting the air with anticipation. And their defenses? Minimal. Their military infrastructure was destroyed in the initial corporate attacks. We detect only civilian shelters, improvised weapons. The geneticist hesitated. However, there is an anomaly. A quantum transmission was detected leaving the planet, directed toward the Terra sector. The captain's eyes narrowed. Earth! The word was a hiss. The Deathworlders. Even among the Varaxians, humans had a reputation. A species that had evolved on a planet of extraordinary hazards, extreme temperature variations, powerful gravity, toxic flora and fauna, and constant warfare. Humans were not the strongest, fastest, or most technologically advanced species in the galaxy, but they possessed a ruthless adaptability that made them dangerous. Are they responding to the distress call? Raxtor demanded. Unknown. Their fleet movements are difficult to track. The geneticist's scales flattened with discomfort. If they are coming, our hunt becomes more sporting. Raxtor bared his teeth in what passed for a smile among his kind. Then we shall prepare an appropriate welcome. On Keros 9, Dr. Leah Arden led her people deeper into the emergency caverns. Engineers rigged unstable reactors into makeshift power sources, while medical teams established field hospitals in the wider chambers. Hydroponic specialists created improvised growing systems using bioluminescent fungi native to the caves, providing a meager supplement to their dwindling rations. Each day brought new challenges: cave-ins caused by continuing seismic activity, radiation spikes that overwhelmed their shielding, conflicts among the survivors as fear and desperation grew. Leah moved among them, resolving disputes, offering encouragement, making the hard decisions that no one else would make. The oxygen recyclers in Section 7 are failing, Thomas reported during their nightly strategy meeting. We've evacuated who we could, but we lost 23 people before we realized what was happening. Leah closed her eyes briefly, adding these names to the mental tally she kept, a growing weight of responsibility. Redistribute the survivors to Sections 3 and 5, priority to families with children and essential personnel. And the others? Put them in the secondary chambers. The air quality is poor, but it's better than nothing. She studied the rough map they'd drawn of the cave system. Any word from the surface monitoring teams? Thomas shook his head. The last team went silent 6 hours ago. Radiation storm? Probably. But before they lost contact, they reported unusual activity in orbit. The Hunt Claw is deploying something. Leah's hand tightened on the edge of the table. They're early. No, Tomas corrected grimly. They're right on schedule. It's Earth that's late. Aboard the Argus Crusader, Commander Reyes received the report from his engineering chief with stoic resignation. How bad is it? Chief Engineer Patel didn't sugarcoat the news. The experimental jump drive burned out after the second jump. Sir, we've pushed the conventional drives beyond safety limits, but physics is physics. We're still at least 36 hours from Karos 9. Reyes nodded, processing the information. And the Hunt Claw. Already in orbit. According to our long-range scans, they've deployed preliminary landing craft, but the main fleet remains in high orbit. They're toying with them, Reyes muttered. Playing with their food. Sir, interrupted Lieutenant Kim. We're receiving another transmission from Dr. Arden. Audio only, heavily degraded. Leah's voice came through in broken fragments. Deploying hunter-seekers. Radiation levels rising. Caves won't hold. Need immediate. If you can hear this. The transmission cut off abruptly. Reyes made his decision. Prepare the rapid deployment force. We're sending in the commandos ahead of the main fleet. Captain Lena Sato of the 87th Tactical Response Force received the orders with grim satisfaction. Her unit had been training for exactly this kind of high-risk insertion since the collapse. 12 men and women who represented the peak of human adaptation to hostile environments. Genetically enhanced, cybernetically augmented, psychologically conditioned. We drop in 6 hours, she informed her team, as they gathered in the destroyer's briefing room. Stealth insertion via high-altitude orbital pods. The radiation storm currently hitting Karos 9 will mask our approach, but it also means we'll be going in hot and blind. She displayed the limited intelligence they had, rough maps of the cave systems, the last known locations of survivor groups, estimated Varaxian deployment patterns. Our mission is threefold, she continued. First, locate and secure Dr. Leah Arden and the civilian leadership. Second, assess and prepare the survivors for emergency evacuation. Third, establish defensive positions to hold until the main fleet arrives. Sergeant Cav Lee, her second-in-command, studied the radiation readings with a frown. Those levels are beyond even our tolerances. Captain, even with the protective gear, we're looking at a 48-hour exposure limit. Then we work fast, Sato replied simply. Any other questions? There were none. The 87th lived by a simple creed. Where others cannot go, we will go. What others cannot endure, we will endure. 6 hours later, 12 stealth pods jettisoned from the destroyer and began their descent toward Karos 9's ravaged surface. They fell like metallic tears through the planet's toxic atmosphere, their heat shields glowing against the perpetual twilight caused by dust and radiation. As the Hunt Claw's bioscanners detected the incoming pods, Captain Raxtor ordered the release of the orbital predators, massive, jellyfish-like creatures, bioengineered to survive in the vacuum of space. They drifted toward the pods, translucent tentacles extending to intercept. The Deathworlders send their best, Raxtor observed, watching the tracking display. Good. They understand the honor of the hunt. In the lead pod, Captain Sato felt the impact as something wrapped around her vessel. Warning lights flashed red as the outer hull began to dissolve under some corrosive agent. Evasive pattern Delta, she ordered through the commando frequency. We've got company. The pods scattered, their emergency thrusters firing in complex patterns. 3 pods were ensnared completely, their occupants fighting to break free as the hull integrity failed. The remaining 9 adjusted course, aiming for different entry points across Karos 9's surface. Sato's pod hit the ground hard, skidding across a field of glass-like sand created by the orbital bombardment. She deployed immediately, her armored suit automatically adjusting to the hostile conditions, radiation shields powering up, oxygen mix recalibrating, sensory enhancements activating to penetrate the perpetual dust storm. "Sound off," she ordered, scanning for her team. 8 responses came through the comm system. 4 silent, acceptable losses for a mission of this complexity. "Rendezvous at coordinates Alpha 3, she directed, bringing up the map on her helmet display. "Movement protocol Echo, 5 minutes above ground. Then we find an entry point to the cave system." The commandos moved like shadows across the blasted landscape, their suits camouflaging them against the gray-brown backdrop of destruction. They passed the ruins of what had once been a magnificent city, toppled spires, shattered domes, the skeletal remains of orbital elevators reaching accusingly toward the sky. And they were not alone. Varaxian hunter-seekers prowled the ruins, bipedal creatures with elongated limbs and sensory organs that pulsed with bioluminescent light. Not Varaxians themselves, but bioengineered hunting beasts created from spliced genetic material. They moved in packs, communicating through subsonic frequencies that the commandos' enhanced hearing detected as a constant, maddening hum. "Hold position," Sato ordered as her point scout signaled a warning. Ahead, a pack of hunter-seekers surrounded the entrance to what appeared to be a maintenance tunnel, likely an access point to the cave system below. "I count 15 hostiles," reported Sergeant Lee. "Standard hunter-seeker morphology, but they're carrying some kind of organic weapon I don't recognize." Sato assessed the situation quickly. "We need that entrance. Stealth approach is compromised, so we go loud. Jackson, Ramirez, wide flanking maneuver. Lee, with me up the center. The rest of you provide covering fire on my mark." The attack was swift and devastating. Enhanced reflexes and combat stimulants gave the commandos an edge that even the bioengineered hunters couldn't match. Plasma rifles discharged with precise bursts, targeting sensory organs and neural clusters. The hunter-seekers responded with their organic weapons, firing caustic projectiles that ate through armor and flesh alike. "They're adapting to our attack pattern," warned Lee, as the creatures began to coordinate their movements more effectively. "Some kind of distributed intelligence network." "Push through," Sato ordered, ignoring the warning indicator that showed a breach in her suit's integrity. "The entrance is our priority." The battle was brief, but brutal. 3 more commandos fell, their suits compromised by the caustic weapons. The survivors secured the entrance, setting up defensive positions as they prepared to descend into the tunnel system. "Blackburn, seal the entrance behind us," Sato ordered. "Lee, take point. Let's find our people." The tunnels were a maze of emergency lighting, hastily erected barricades, and the evidence of desperate survival: makeshift hydroponic setups, recycled water systems, improvised medical stations, and bodies. Many bodies. Some recent, victims of radiation poisoning, or the cave-ins that regularly shook the unstable network. They encountered the first survivors, 3 kilometers in. A small group of engineers maintaining a critical power junction. The engineers reacted with fear and suspicion until Sato identified herself. "Earth?" one of them asked, disbelief evident in his voice. "You actually came." "Where can we find Dr. Arden?" Sato asked, ignoring the question. "Central Command, Level 5, replied the engineer. "But you'll have to hurry. The hunter-seekers breached Level 2 yesterday. We've been falling back ever since." The commandos moved deeper, encountering more survivors and occasional pockets of resistance where security personnel fought, holding actions against the encroaching hunter-seekers. They assisted where they could, but their primary mission remained clear: secure the leadership, prepare for evacuation. On Level 5, they found Dr. Leah Arden coordinating the defense from a makeshift command center. She looked up as they entered, her expression shifting from alarm to cautious hope as she recognized their Earth insignia. Commander Reyes sent you, she said. It wasn't a question. Captain Lena Sato, 87th Tactical Response Force. Sato introduced herself, removing her helmet to reveal a face marked by old scars and recent combat. We're your advance team. The main fleet will be here in approximately 30 hours. We won't last 30 hours, Leah said flatly. The Hunt Claw breached our outer defenses yesterday. They're not just killing, they're taking prisoners. Specifically, they're targeting our genetic repository and medical personnel. Sato nodded grimly. Typical Varaxian pattern. They're harvesting genetic material for their bioengineering programs. Can your team help establish a defensive perimeter? Asked Tomas, studying the commandos with professional assessment. We have civilian security forces, but they're not equipped for this kind of enemy. That's part of why we're here, Sato confirmed. But our primary mission is to prepare for evacuation. When the fleet arrives, we'll have a very narrow window to get your people out. Leah exchanged glances with Thomas. We have over 3,000 survivors scattered throughout the cave system. Many are injured, ill, or elderly. Evacuation will be challenging. Then we'd better get started, Sato replied. First, I need a complete layout of your defenses, personnel distribution, and emergency protocols. As they began planning, the situation in orbit was evolving rapidly. The advanced elements of the Earth fleet, 3 destroyers pushed to their engineering limits, arrived at the edge of the Kairos system. The Hunt Claw detected them immediately, breaking off their ground operations to address this new threat. Commander Reyes, still aboard the Argus Crusader racing toward Kairos 9, received the update from the destroyer squadron. Hunt Claw fleet is responding to our advance elements, reported Captain Miyazaki of the destroyer Indefatigable. They've deployed their bioships and organic weaponry. It's unlike anything in our tactical database, sir. Hold position at the system edge, Reyes ordered. Do not engage directly. Your mission is to distract and divide their forces until the main battle group arrives. Understood, sir. But there's something else you should know. Miyazaki's voice became grim. We've detected unusual energy signatures from the Hunt Claw flagship. They're preparing something big. On the Hunt Claw flagship, Captain Rax Tor supervised the final preparations for the Hunt Bloom, a massive bioengineered weapon designed to saturate a planet's atmosphere with spores that would seek out specific genetic markers. The last components were being integrated, genetic samples harvested from Kairos 9's population. The Earth ships have arrived earlier than anticipated, reported his tactical officer. Shall we engage? Rax Tor studied the tactical display. No, they're a diversion. Their main force is still incoming. His clawed hand gestured to the Hunt Bloom. Continue the preparation. Once deployed, no rescue will matter. The planet and its people will belong to the Hunt Claw forever. Below, in Kairos 9's cave system, the 87th Tactical Response Force worked with frantic efficiency to prepare for evacuation. They established defensive choke points, trained civilian volunteers in basic combat techniques, and set up emergency triage centers to assess who could be moved and who would require special transport. Captain Sato, reviewing the evacuation plans with Dr. Arden, received an encrypted transmission from the Earth fleet. The Hunt Claw is preparing a bioweapon, she informed Leah after decoding the message. Some kind of atmospheric dispersal system. If it deploys before evacuation, then no one leaves. Leah finished, understanding immediately. How long do we have? Unknown, but we need to accelerate our timetable. Sato turned to her remaining team. Lee, take a squad to the surface. I need eyes on that weapon. As Lee's team prepared for the dangerous ascent, the cave system shook with a massive impact. Dust and rocks rained down as the lights flickered. They're bombarding the surface again, Tomas reported, checking the seismic monitors. Targeted strikes, directly above our primary evacuation routes. They know where we are, Leah realized. a chill running through her. Someone told them. The implication hung in the air. A traitor among the survivors. Someone desperate or cowardly enough to bargain with the Huntclaw. But there was no time to investigate. The bombardment continued, each impact bringing down more of the cave system. We need to move the civilians deeper, Sato decided, and find alternative evacuation routes. The next 12 hours were a desperate race against time. Sergeant Lee's surface team confirmed the worst. The Huntclaw was positioning orbital platforms to deploy the bioweapon, creating a web that would saturate the entire atmosphere. Meanwhile, hunter-seekers had penetrated to level 4 of the cave system, forcing a constant fighting retreat. Above, the advanced destroyer squadron engaged in hit-and-run tactics against the Huntclaw fleet, drawing off ships and resources. The bio-jellyfish that had attacked the commando pods now swarmed the destroyers, their tentacles latching onto hull plating and slowly dissolving it. Hull integrity at 60% and falling, reported the Indefatigable's first officer. Engineering says we can maintain life support for another 3 hours at this rate. Captain Miyazaki nodded grimly. Continue evasive maneuvers. We just need to hold out until the Argus Crusader arrives. The battle in space was a dance of desperation. Earth technology against Varaxian bioengineering. The destroyer's conventional weapons proved largely ineffective against the organic nature of the Huntclaw vessels, which could seal breaches with living tissue and reroute functions through redundant systems. On Karis 9's surface, Sergeant Lee's team fought their way to a vantage point overlooking the main Huntclaw landing zone. What they saw confirmed their worst fears. The hunter-seekers were herding captured civilians into massive organic pods, transporting them to orbit for processing. Captain, they're accelerating their harvest, Lee reported. Dozens of transport pods launching every hour, and the bioweapon is nearly complete. I can see the deployment platforms forming a grid in low orbit. In the command center, Sato relayed this information to Dr. Arden. We're out of time, she said bluntly. We need to begin evacuation now, before that weapon deploys. Once it's in the atmosphere. But the fleet isn't here yet, Leah protested. How do we evacuate without ships? We go up, Sato said, pointing to the map. There's a Varaxian landing zone here, less than 2 kilometers from our eastern access tunnel. If we can capture their transport pods. The plan was audacious, bordering on suicidal. Use the remaining commandos and civilian security forces to launch a surprise attack on the landing zone. Capture the organic transport pods. Hold the position long enough to load as many survivors as possible. And pray that the Earth fleet arrived before the Huntclaw realized what was happening. It's our only chance, Sato insisted when Tomas raised objections. Every hour we wait, more of your people are captured or killed. Leah made the decision. We do it. I'll lead the civilian evacuation personally. The attack on the landing zone was launched 3 hours later. The remaining commandos, augmented by the best of Karis 9's security personnel, emerged from concealed tunnel entrances in a coordinated assault. They struck from multiple directions simultaneously, overwhelming the hunter-seekers before they could organize a response. Landing zone secure, reported Lee as the last of the Varaxian guards fell. 6 transport pods captured intact. They're disgusting, but functional. The pods were indeed repulsive. Living vessels with pulsating walls and organic control interfaces that responded to touch and pheromones. But they were also the survivors' only hope. Begin loading immediately, Sato ordered. Priority to children, medical cases, and essential personnel. Maximum capacity per pod is 50 humanoids. As the first civilians emerged from the tunnels, blinking in the unfamiliar twilight of their ruined world, orbital monitors detected the incoming Earth fleet. The Argus Crusader battle group dropped out of jump space at the edge of the system, weapons hot and shields at maximum. Battle stations, Commander Reyes ordered, surveying the tactical display. The situation was grim. The advanced destroyer squadron reduced to a single vessel, still harried by bioweapons. the Hunt Claw fleet in defensive formation around Karos 9, and the bioweapon platforms forming an ominous web in low orbit. "Sir, we're detecting multiple launches from the surface," reported Lieutenant Kim. "Voraxian transport signatures. But there's something odd about their flight patterns." Reyes leaned forward. "Magnify." The pods were ascending in an erratic, non-standard pattern, as if being piloted by someone unfamiliar with their operation. "It's them," he realized. Sato's team must have captured Voraxian transports. He turned to his tactical officer. "Create a corridor for those pods. All ships. Priority target is the bioweapon deployment grid. We need to punch a hole before those transports reach orbit." The Earth fleet surged forward, unleashing a barrage of conventional and experimental weapons. Railguns fired hypervelocity projectiles that shattered bioengineered hulls. Plasma lances burned through organic matter. Electronic warfare suites disrupted the subtle biochemical signals that coordinated the Hunt Claw's distributed intelligence. The Voraxian response was immediate and overwhelming. Bioships swarmed toward the Earth vessels, launching waves of smaller attack craft that resembled predatory fish, their hulls bristling with organic weapons that fired corrosive projectiles and energy beams. "Shields at 70%, reported the Argus Crusaders' defensive systems officer. "The organic weapons are adapting to our shield frequency." "Rotate frequencies," Reyes ordered, "and continue pressing toward the planet. Those transports are our priority." On the surface, the evacuation continued under increasingly desperate conditions. The Hunt Claw had detected the captured pods and was diverting forces to the landing zone. Hunter-seekers swarmed from surrounding ruins, while orbital strikes targeted the access tunnels, collapsing escape routes. "We've loaded 3 pods, reported Lee, firing his plasma rifle at an approaching hunter-seeker. "Approximately 150 civilians away, but we're losing ground fast." Captain Sato, her armor scored and partially melted by enemy fire, made a quick calculation. "We hold for 2 more pods. Then we fall back to secondary positions." Dr. Leah Arden moved among the civilians, organizing them into groups, calming panicked children, helping the injured. When a section of tunnel collapsed, trapping dozens, she led the rescue effort personally, crawling through unstable passages to reach the survivors. "The next group is ready," she reported to Sato, dust and blood streaking her face. "But we're running out of able-bodied adults, most of whose left are children, elderly, or seriously injured." Sato nodded grimly. 2 more pods, then we transition to defensive operations." Above, the battle for orbital supremacy reached its climax. The Earth fleet had suffered heavy losses, 2 cruisers disabled, multiple destroyers venting atmosphere, but they had succeeded in disrupting the bioweapon deployment. Several platforms had been destroyed, creating a narrow, safe corridor for the ascending transport pods. But the Hunt Claw was adapting. Their flagship, an enormous vessel resembling a predatory fish, sculpted from bone and sinew, moved into position above the corridor, its biological weapons powering up for a devastating strike that would obliterate the transports. On the Argus Crusaders bridge, Commander Reyes watched the tactical display with growing dread. "They're going to destroy those transports," he said quietly. "All those civilians—" "Sir, our weapons can't penetrate their flagship's defenses," reported the tactical officer. "It's regenerating damage faster than we can inflict it." Reyes studied the display for a long moment. Then he turned to his executive officer. "Prepare to evacuate the bridge crew to auxiliary control, and set a collision course for the Hunt Claw flagship." The XO's eyes widened. "Sir!" "You heard me, Commander." Reyes's voice was calm, his decision made. "Those transport pods contain the last survivors of an entire world. I will not watch them die when I have the power to prevent it." As the bridge crew relocated to auxiliary control, Reyes remained at his post, manually adjusting the cruiser's course. The massive ship accelerated toward the Hunt Claw flagship, its engines pushed beyond safe parameters, the hull groaning under the strain. On the Huntclaw flagship, Captain Raxtor detected the approaching cruiser with growing alarm. "Evasive maneuvers," he ordered. "All weapons, target that vessel." But it was too late. The Argus Crusader, 8 million tons of Earth engineering and human determination, slammed into the Huntclaw flagship at near relativistic velocity. The impact shattered the organic vessel's spine, rupturing its power core and setting off a chain reaction that consumed both ships in a blinding flash of energy. The explosion created a momentary gap in the Huntclaw's defenses, a gap that the transport pods exploited, pushing through to rendezvous with the remaining Earth vessels. One by one, the ugly organic ships were brought aboard the Earth cruisers, their exhausted and traumatized passengers transferred to medical bays and emergency shelters. On the surface, the remaining commandos and security forces fought a desperate rearguard action, covering the launch of the final transport pod. Captain Sato, down to her last power cell and with her armor failing, made the call. "All remaining personnel, fall back to Extraction Point Bravo. We're getting out of here." But as they retreated through the ruins, a massive seismic event, triggered by the orbital battle, collapsed their escape route. Sato, Lee, and a dozen security personnel found themselves cut off, surrounded by advancing hunter-seekers. "New plan," Sato announced, checking her weapons. "We hold here as long as possible. Give the transports time to clear the atmosphere." They made their stand in the ruins of what had once been a university observatory, a circular structure with clear fields of fire and defensible positions. As the hunter-seekers closed in, Lee looked to his captain. "It's been an honor," he said simply. Sato nodded. "For Earth and Keros 9. The battle was brief but furious. The commandos and security forces fought with the desperate courage of those who know they are already dead. One by one, they fell, until only Sato remained, her ammunition exhausted, using her combat knife against the encroaching beasts. Her last conscious thought was satisfaction. Above, the final transport pod cleared the atmosphere, escaping into the waiting embrace of the Earth fleet. In the aftermath, the surviving Earth vessels regrouped, cataloging the rescued civilians and assessing their losses. Over 2,000 survivors had been evacuated from Keros 9, less than half of those who had sheltered in the caves, but far more than anyone had dared hope. Dr. Leah Arden moved among them, offering what comfort she could, while also working with Earth medical personnel to address the most urgent cases: radiation poisoning, traumatic injuries, and the profound psychological damage of witnessing their world's destruction. "Commander Reyes," she asked, when she finally made her way to the bridge of the surviving cruiser. "I'd like to thank him personally." The acting captain, formerly Reyes's XO, shook his head sadly. "Commander Reyes stayed aboard the Argus Crusader. He didn't make it." Leah closed her eyes briefly, adding one more name to her mental tally of the lost. "And Captain Sato? Sergeant Lee?" "No communication from the surface team since the final transport launched," the captain replied. "We have to assume they were overrun." As the fleet began its long journey back to Earth, the Varaxian forces retreated in disarray, their flagship destroyed, their hunt coordinator lost. The remaining bioships withdrew to the system's edge to regroup and regenerate. But they left behind a message, broadcast on all frequencies. "This hunt is paused, not ended. We will return." 2 weeks later, the convoy arrived at Earth. Public acclaim and sorrow greeted the returning ships. Memorials erected for the fallen. Celebrations for the rescued. The survivors of Keros 9 were granted emergency citizenship and resettlement assistance, an entire habitat dome allocated for their community. In a solemn ceremony at Fleet Headquarters, Dr. Leah Arden delivered a eulogy for the lost, her voice steady despite her grief. Keros 9 was a world of scholars, artists, and traders, she told the assembled dignitaries and media. We sought knowledge and beauty in a universe often defined by violence and conquest. When we called for help, our traditional allies remained silent. But Earth, a world we knew only from historical records, answered. She paused, looking out at the sea of faces. Commander Adrian Reyes, Captain Lena Sato, Sergeant Cav Lee, and all who fell with them. They represent the best of what sentient beings can aspire to be. They gave their lives not for glory or conquest, but to preserve life itself. We who survived will honor their sacrifice by rebuilding, by remembering, and by standing guard against the darkness that still threatens us all. The political fallout was immediate and far-reaching. The United Earth Council restructured its fleet doctrine. No more passive rescue. Humanity would answer SOS beacons with full force, positioning itself as a protector in a galaxy where traditional alliances had failed. But in the galaxy's dark fringe, the Huntclaw was not defeated, merely wounded. Captain Rax Tor, having escaped the flagship's destruction in a lifepod, rebuilt a secondary strike force. His cloned body bore new scars, but his determination was undiminished. The Deathworlders have proven themselves worthy adversaries, he announced to his gathered clan leaders, which makes them the ultimate prey. On a view screen, the coordinates of Earth, the Sol system, glowed like a target. The brood ship's engines flared to life, beginning the long journey toward humanity's homeworld. On Earth's orbital observation deck, Dr. Leah Arden stood alone, watching a tiny light blinking far off in space, the last remnant of Keros 9's beacon, now silent. Her reflection in the transparent aluminum showed a woman changed by ordeal, thinner, harder, but with eyes still capable of hope. No allies came, she whispered to herself. We became our own salvation, and perhaps the galaxy's greatest danger. Behind her, the shipyards of Earth glowed with activity as new vessels took shape, warships and rescue craft alike. Humanity preparing for its new role in a fractured galaxy. The most dangerous species had responded to Keros 9's call, and the galaxy would never be the same.